There are over 700,000 sexual offenders in the United States alone. With all the social media these days, how can we protect ourselves and our children from these despicable predators?
Welcome to the Voice of the Victim podcast, where we discuss criminal cases that involve some factor of abuse. Our goal is to spread awareness of abuse that could be taking place around any of us and encourage everyone to take responsibility and report if they see a child or an adult being abused. Between 1525 and 1866, 12.5 million Africans were stolen from their homes and shipped out of their country. Only 10.7 million of them survived the dreadful voyage into other countries around the world. Nearly 400,000 were shipped directly to North America and forced into slavery. They and their offspring endured a waking nightmare for their entire lives. Thankfully, in the U.S., slavery was abolished fully by the 1860s. Though there was still so much prejudice to overcome, that was the end of slavery, or so we thought. Many people think slavery is a thing of the past, but the truth is, slavery is worse today than it ever has been. It is estimated that there are between 20 and 30 million slaves in the world right now. According to the U.S. State Department, 600 to 800,000 people are trafficked across international borders each year. They are used for both sexual and labor exploitation. Hey guys, this is Ryan. I just wanted to jump in real quick before I link to the rest of the episode. Rosie and I recorded this episode before she left for Paris. We recorded actually 2 episodes in a row, and once they were finished, she had to leave to go to the airport, and I realized that the sound quality, I was testing out a different mic setup, and the sound quality was pretty bad, so please forgive us for that. Forgive me. We are working on it, and we're getting a better mic setup. Please be patient with us. Hopefully you can still get some good value and information out of this podcast, even with the bad sound. So I apologize again, and I promise after episode 5 and 6, they'll both have kind of bad sound, but after that, it'll be fixed. So hang in there. Hope you enjoyed our conversation.
Well, good morning, Ryan.
Hi, Rosie. So you're going to be leaving me for a couple weeks?
Yeah, so I'm going to be going to Paris, so we whipped this up right before I go on the plane so that we'll have a couple episodes ready to go and you won't have to do them by yourself.
Thank you.
So today we're going to talk about human sex trafficking like we talked about on our last week's podcast leading up to this one. This topic is not known as worldwide as it should, and it needs way more awareness. So,
can I steal some of your coffee?
Yeah.
Since you never finish it anyway?
I was going to try.
Try what?
To finish it. So first I want to define exactly what human trafficking is, because it gets mixed up with the other term, human smuggling, and they're very different. Human trafficking is the trade of humans for the purpose of forced labor, sexual slavery, or commercial sexual exploitation for the trafficker. So a human can either be forced into forced labor, like construction work. They can be nannies, which I am.
But you get to go home.
And I get to go home. Or just slaves in the home to clean and do all that stuff. The other way that they can be human trafficked is sexual slavery, like a personal sex slave that's only used in one household. And the way we're going to talk about today is commercial sex slavery, which they're used over and over again for multiple people.
Yeah, it's about an 80-20 split. 80% of the people trafficked out of the U.S. are used for sexual slavery and 20% for labor slavery. So, I mean, they're both terrible. Whether you're being forced into labor or sexual slavery, they're both horrible, but we're going to be focusing on the sexual side of it.
This industry is a $32 billion a year money-making industry, and that's just in the U.S.
Wow.
300,000 Americans under 18 are lured in every year. This is the fastest growing industry that the world has ever seen. And do you want to guess how much money per year in the world this industry makes? You'll never guess. It's 150.2 billion.
Since you're listening, I had a dumbfounded look on my face.
So 150.2 billion. That's a lot of money. I can't even fathom how many swimming pools that is.
Billion?
Mm-hmm. 150 billion.2
per year.
Right. In the world.
That's ridiculous.
We live in Minnesota, so I looked up some statistics about Minnesota and human sex trafficking. The Twin Cities is one of the nation's largest centers for a sex trafficking ring and for child prostitution under the age of 13. There are 13 sex trafficking rings around the U.S. alone. A November 2010 study showed that on any weekend night in Minnesota, 45 girls under the age of 18 are sold for sex. Also, I found a really interesting little fact that the Super Bowl, a cherished event that most people enjoy football. I don't really like it, but it's really big. That's the jackpot for human sex trafficking. That is their favorite event also, but for way different reasons. It brings in the most cash per year. So while you guys are enjoying your football, just remember in the back of your head that these poor people, you don't have to put that. I just don't like football very much. It's boring.
I disagree.
I also want to talk about how human sex trafficking, how these people are brought into the rings. It's not like Taken. They're not just snatched from the streets. I mean, sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
But it's way more about manipulation than force. Oh, you're going to say something?
Well, I don't know what you were going to say, but yeah, a lot of them are offered jobs, well-paying and respectable jobs, but then they become reliant on the people that they're working for, and they find some way to blackmail them into staying.
Right. The pimps or the trafficker, they really make themselves look like the good guy, and that's what messes a lot of people's thinking up about how human sex trafficking happens, and they put their guard down. Because human traffickers, they're not, like I said, they're not going to snatch you out of your car, out of your house. What they start doing is making a friendship with you and gaining your trust. There's a few terms that I learned terminology about human sex trafficking, and there's two different kinds of pimps. First, you have your Romeo pimp, and that's the one who primarily, through psychological manipulation, is going to gain your trust and shower you with affection and gifts. They're going to date you. They're going to want a physical, affectionate relationship with you. And then once you have a really strong connection with them, after 6 months to a year, that's how long this grooming process takes, they're going to switch on you. And you're going to be pimped out without really even knowing that this transition is happening.
Yeah, and in this process, they get you to turn against your family,
and it's a slow...
So you have no one else to go to. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's just a really slow process, and they know exactly what they're doing, and that's the scary part about it. And then there's another pimp, the gorilla pimp. Such a dumb name. But that's the pimp who's going to control using physical violence and force. So this one's a lot more violent, as you can imagine, and the switch is quicker, but by them using the physical violence, it just targets their victim faster, and it gets them to do what they want faster. Gorilla pimps are more likely to prey on girls that are more battered. They come from hard childhoods, a little bit more broken. Few more things I want to say.
Advantage of those insecurities and terrible situations that they want to escape from.
Yeah, one pimp was actually interviewed, and he said he wanted, well, he's not practicing anymore, but he wanted to thank all the fathers for abusing their daughters because it made his job so much easier. Scum, right?
The kind of person that would even say that?
Mm-hmm. In the U.S., there's about 1.6 million homeless kids, and 15% of that number is going to fall into human trafficking. That's only runaways and homeless kids. Their main target, although the easy ones are the runaways, is going to be to find children that are from better households that they can groom, that will sell better.
A lot of times they'll prey, like for the Romeo ones, they'll prey on the girls that are like from upper middle class families that are, you know, all about keeping up appearances. Their parents are and stuff, but they kind of have something to prove. Like, I can be a bad girl too. So they start dating a guy that is a little sketchy because to her friend group that might seem cool at the time. So they'll prey on those girls.
Yeah. Let's just stay on that for a second about the pimps and how you're trusting this person for a good 6 months to a year. I've done a lot of research about interviewing these girls once they're finally brought out or they escape. And they say they had no idea anything was going on. They were in a committed relationship with this person and they grew to love them.
How scary is that?
So it would just be, heartbreaking too. You're scared and you're heartbroken.
And what can you do about it? You think you met this really nice guy that you're falling in love with, and it seems like they're putting in the work to have a good relationship and that they're a good person, and then all of a sudden they start secretly giving you drugs and you become addicted and they're your source, so you can't run away because you gotta feed your addiction.
Or they buy you so much amazing gifts, so many gifts, and they give you this really nice apartment, and then one day he's like, I've been giving you so much stuff lately, baby. I think you owe me a few favors. That's a lot of what I read.
One of the processes that stood out to me is there would be this actual legitimate business front on the foreground, but then you'll start working for them and they'll turn on you. Another thing that scared me is they would offer you jobs in other countries, like with apartments that came with the job, like you got free living, all expenses covered.
And it seems legit. You don't have to be dumb to fall into this.
Yeah, it's a legitimate company that's as a cover for this, and then you'll get on the plane, you'll go over there, and they'll bring you back to the place where you think you're going to be working for a job, and all of a sudden they jump you and they inject you with something to knock you out, and then they give you an IV of addictive drugs, like I mentioned earlier, where you get hooked on them because they force them into you, and then you can't leave because you're addicted to this drug, and this is the only place you know where to get it. And a lot of the times they have no idea what country they're in or how to contact home.
They don't have any of their travel documents. They don't have any money. They don't have clothes even.
Terrifying. So this is a great case to cover before you go to Paris, where I won't be with you.
I'll be careful.
Wasn't that where Taken started, in Paris?
I don't remember.
I think it was.
I don't know. I've seen that movie and I thought, this is amazing. Liam Neeson is so cool. And then I looked into this and I was like, that movie doesn't talk about any real situation.
Well, that movie is pretty old.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of this stuff has been coming into the light more recently.
Yeah, maybe. They're getting to know what they're doing. It's progressively getting better and better for the trafficker.
What was that movie we watched about the Mexican
Trafficked.
cartel?
Oh, there's a good movie that just came out that actually talks about, it's a low budget film, that's how you know it's real, that organizations made to teach people about human trafficking. It's called Trafficked.
Yeah. And it's not just countries like overseas, it's also the cartel doesn't just do drugs, they also do trafficking. There's tons of rings just in the U.S. I mean, we live in Minnesota, and didn't you say that's where the biggest sex trafficking ring in the U.S. is?
I've been looking around the internet, and I find different things on different sites, but it's at least making one of the biggest.
Yeah. The scariest thing about this is that we don't really know because it's so hidden. Like, all all the authorities can really do is make estimates on how bad it is, because
By the cases that they're actually seeing.
Yeah, they're finding cases, but they don't know how much of it is actually going on. So the legitimate statistics aren't there.
So I wanted to talk about what pimps are looking for, the research that we're finding, and what professionals are finding and giving us back to us. Pimps are primarily looking for broken girls, runaways at bus stops, girls that are looking for a better life for themselves, that are lacking employment, have an unstable home life, or already have a history of sexual or physical abuse. Those are easy targets. They're going to come up to you and they're going to seem like they're really nice guys or girls. Girls have also helped with the sex rings.
Bait and switch.
Yeah, well, I'll get to that in a minute. I've got all the terms.
All right.
These guys are going to promise you a high-paying job, and it's going to seem really legitimate. Or they're going to come across as a really nice guy who wants to take you out and go on a couple dates and offer you a loving relationship. Or even really new and exciting adventures that you've really wanted to go on all your life, and you're just looking for the right person to go with. They'll use physical and psychological abuse to control you. Primarily, they won't show any signs of this, but slowly they're going to try to isolate you from your friends and family and cut off ties of communication with other people. Also, the prime ages for victims that are being recruited are between the ages of 11 to 14.
Yeah. So when you, as an adult, if you're listening to this, you're probably like, well, I don't walk by myself at night, but when you're 12 to 14 years old, you haven't really realized the value of your parents' suggestions that rules that they make, and you might feel like, I'm just going to rebel because I'm so bored sitting at home. But the average age, like you said, 11 to 14, these poor girls, they don't realize how scary the world is. So at the risk of scaring our children, we want to make sure that they're educated on this, and they know that they're staying off the streets not just to follow their parents' rules, but the actual reasons and what could possibly happen to them. Because saying don't touch the stove isn't as powerful as if you touch the stove, you're going to burn your hand. So
that's a good metaphor. I think that
be honest.
Being a young teenager, you're really flattered by attention. Being a victim of sexual abuse myself, I was, by an older man. And that's really important for parents to keep track of social media pages, too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with going through your kids' pages.
Didn't you say that was the main way they contact these girls at first?
Might be. I don't remember what I said.
Or for the Romeo ones?
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with parents going through the kids' stuff, because you're a parent and your kids are dumb, especially when they're young teenagers.
Yeah. As they get older, privacy is important, but when they're that young,
it's okay.
Just to protect them,
Another thing a retired pimp who is working with the police now said is this is the most amazing business to get into because your product is reusable. It doesn't get old. I mean, it does, but you can resell it and repackage it right after it's used. These girls are getting pimped out. I mean, they can get pimped out 30 times a night and be reused in the morning. It's amazing.
Yeah, they give them minimums that they're forced to meet.
Most girls get a quota. If they don't meet it, they're just going to get beaten and starved until they meet it. So they'll go out, they'll try to meet the quota. If they don't, they'll come back by a certain time. Their pimp beats them and then sends them off. Some of the girls said they didn't get to sleep for like 48 hours until they met their quota.
Oh my gosh.
I found a website. It's called dhs.gov, and it's got some really good tips about how to identify a victim. I wrote down a few of the tips. It says, does the person seem disconnected from family, friends, community? Has a child stopped attending school? Has there been a sudden change in behavior? Are there various bruises? Are bruises found on the body in various stages of healing? Does the person seem fearful, timid, or submissive? And is the person often in the company of someone whom she or he defers? Someone who's in control.
Yeah, I kind of want to go back to what you're talking about the reusability of the product. So like you mentioned, they love this product because it's reusable. If you think about drugs, you sell them once, the people use them, and they're gone.
You gotta find some more.
Yeah, you gotta find more. And with these girls, they make them do it 30 times before they let them sleep.
I think I'm actually gonna go to the terms that these pimps have in human sex trafficking. This disturbed me. It's almost like they have their own dictionary of words and terms, and it just kind of creeped me out that
well, the scary part is these people are brilliant business people. They're just evil.
They're brilliant, and they have this own language that is like known worldwide between them. Wow. So, first of all, an automatic. This is like the normal routine that the victim is going to follow when the pimp is either out of town or he's in jail. The victims are so strung out on drugs or they're so submissive in fear that they're going to completely comply with the rules or do so out of fear of punishment. A bottom is a female who's appointed by a pimp to supervise others and report rule violations. She's going to help collect money, book rooms, or post ads.
She's the narc.
She's like the old prostitute who got promoted.
The one that's just given up on the will to have a normal life.
And now she's just going to...
accepted her.
Yeah, she's in it for the money now at that point.
Which, how can you blame her?
A branding. Most girls or boys who are in human trafficking, they get a tattoo or a carving in their skin, and that indicates the owner or who they are owned by. And that's scary because if you do escape and someone sees this tattoo and they're a pimp or they're a bottom, they're going to report you to that pimp.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, you made it out, but you could still be found.
Yeah, and you've seen those episodes of Law & Order where the girls have a barcode on them.
Mm-hmm.
And what a struggle even the NYPD had trying to find where these girls are coming from. Because the part that makes it so difficult is that they can't arrest the girls because they're not the ones doing it. It's the pimps. So if they arrest the girls, the pimps will know that someone's after them. They'll move their shop and they won't get caught. So,
but they do arrest the girls sometimes. A stable, that's the holding cell for the girls. I hate that because it's like the girls are horses. Yeah. Choosing up, this is really interesting. This is when a different pimp takes ownership of one of the victims. So all the victims will line up, and it's almost like a store. And the pimps will walk through this line of girls, and they'll negotiate of which one they want to trade, and which ones they want to sell. And the strange thing about it, somehow there's like this unspoken code that if one of the girls looks up at one of the pimps, that means that they're choosing that pimp. So they have to keep their eyes on the ground. I don't know how that started, but if you look up at that pimp and it's not a good one, then you're done. Like, that's yours. That's your guy. It's really strange to me.
You have to decide based on their shoes?
What?
Well, because that's all you can see.
Well, the pimps usually choose the girls, but if a girl looks up at the pimp, that apparently means that she wants that pimp.
Oh.
I don't know. It's really strange. A circuit is a series of cities that victims were moved around. I learned about something, I think it was called the Minnesota Pipeline, and it's like this pathway of rings that, like a concert tour that the pimps will bring their girls through this selected city ring. It's really interesting. Daddy is what the victim is going to call the pimp, or what the pimp expects her to call him. An exit fee is an absurd amount of money that the pimp will order the victim to pay if they want to leave because of all the bills they've racked up for the pimp, the drugs and the slutty costumes.
And the pimp blames them for it.
Yeah. Usually it's so absurd. It's part of the breaking process because it's like they don't even know how they're going to make the money, so they just kind of give up. Folks is what other victims under the control of the pimp call each other. So it's like all the girls are a family, and if they're talking about another fellow victim, they'll say, "Oh, my folks over there on that side." It's just strange.
It's their way of kind of making themselves a family after theirs was taken away from them.
Yeah. A madame is an older prostitute who now runs a brothel, or just an older woman who runs a brothel. A lot lizard, that beautiful title, is a victim who works at a truck stop. So wouldn't you love to have that name?
Yeah, I suppose the truckers are on the road they're probably prime customers.
A kiddie stroll is an area well known for child prostitution and child victims. And then again, the gorilla pimp and the Romeo pimp, we already talked about those ones. So those are some of the terms that I learned about over the week.
I'm guessing they target the truckers because, I mean, they're basically driving around a giant bedroom because they usually have a bed built into their truck.
Well, and they're bored and they
just sneak the girls in there and hit him.
Yeah.
Ugh.
The website I found, dhs.gov, it's a helpful website. It was to me in how to recognize human sex trafficking. They put a bunch of questions about how you can tell if a loved one is being trafficked. So I jotted some down. A few of the questions are, does the person seem disconnected from family, friends, or the community? Has a child stopped attending school? Has there been sudden change in behavior? Do you see bruises in various stages of healing? Does the person seem fearful, timid, or submissive? Is the person often in the company of someone who seems in control? And do they appear to be coached on what to say? So, helpful tips. If you see anything, then you should report and call this number, 1-866-347-2423. The victims can be any age, they can be any gender or race. Pimps are not going to discriminate if you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian. It does not matter.
I remember what I was going to say earlier. It's a lot easier to smuggle these girls, surprisingly, than it is to smuggle drugs, because if you get pulled over and your truck is full of drugs, you're getting booked immediately and probably getting a worse sentence than you would if you were caught with girls. But the girls are so trained that they can get pulled over and the pimp will just be like, "Oh yeah, this is my little sister," or something like that, and they don't look suspicious at all because they're a person. And a lot of these pimps on the outside just look like normal people. So
right, they don't look scary like the movies make them seem. You know, a lot of people ask, like, why didn't you escape earlier when you had the chance, when the pimp left the house, or why didn't you do it this way?
Or say something when you got pulled over and the cop was standing right there.
Yeah,
you know?
That just infuriates me, because people don't realize how manipulated and brainwashed these girls are.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if these people are willing to actually traffic people, they're probably willing to commit murder. Like, if the girl screams out to the cop, the guy might shoot the cop and drive off, you know?
Or they've threatened these women, or boys. I always say women, but boys are in it too, that if you say something, I'm going to kill you and I'm going to kill your family. So there's a constant threat in the back of their, back of their minds that if I do anything, if I do get out, my family's dead.
Yeah,
so what's the point?
No idea if these people have wider connections outside where they can just make a phone call or shoot a text and all of a sudden their family gets sniped, you know?
Yeah, so scary.
It's a big operation. And
it happens in big cities, it happens in small towns, and it happens in suburbs. It doesn't happen just in the ghetto or New York. It happens everywhere. So, I mean, you can be rich, you can be middle class, you can be poor, and you still need to keep your guard up.
So at the beginning we mentioned the comparison between this and the slavery of the 15 to 1800s. And during that time, there was the Underground Railroad we know of, where they helped African-American slaves escape into free states and stuff like that. But nowadays, there's an organization called Operation Underground Railroad, or OUR. OUR is their acronym. But Tim Ballard, who's an ex-special agent of the U.S. for the Department of Homeland Security, he started this organization to go in and work with the countries where this trafficking is happening, with the law enforcement there, and do it the right way, but infiltrate the trafficking rings by actually sitting on the beach waiting for someone to walk up and offer them a girl, and then they'll act interested, they'll go through all the processes, and they'll basically set up sting operations that way. Thankfully, organizations like this exist. He said he's really picky with the people that he hires to work with him. Obviously, he doesn't want any bad apples or people that are going to be working for the trafficking rings getting in, so he gets tons and tons of applications, and there's this heavy vetting process that he does, and he says he'll get dozens and dozens of applications and usually only end up hiring about 5 at a time, and most of them are people that worked in law enforcement in the U.S. before. So after a heavy vetting process and lots of interviews, then he lets them in. And this is a non-profit that thankfully a lot of these ex-law enforcement people are wanting to get into out of the goodness of their hearts. So, if they do want to work for it, they're not doing it for the money. They're doing it because they want to make a difference in this terrible thing. And that's why he started it, is because working for the U.S. government, he didn't have jurisdiction over these other countries. But now he can go in as a nonprofit and work with the governments in those countries and actually make a difference.
It's nice to know there's nice people out there.
Yeah, it is.
Well, that's really all I have for today's episode. I didn't really give a story. I do plan on getting a few victim stories and talking about them, but I thought for this first episode talking about human trafficking that we could just go over the signs, what you can do, what to look for, the terminology, because that's kind of equally important as just hearing the stories.
Yeah.
There's so many things, and there's so many stories that I could go over. It's going to be really hard to pick one because there's just hundreds of thousands of victims.
And like I said last week, I wouldn't be surprised if we make up to 5 episodes on this. Not all in a row, but over time.
Right.
It's something that we're passionate about, especially Rosie, and we really want to focus a light on it and hopefully help you keep yourself and your family out of harm's way from sexual trafficking.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting. I didn't know, but there is a sexual trafficking awareness month, and I didn't know what month it was. Did you know what month it was, Ryan?
I'd say maybe January or February.
It was January.
Is that the month of the Super Bowl?
That would make sense. But I'm not sure if that's the Super Bowl month because I don't like football.
I can never remember.
But I thought January, I don't remember seeing anything on TV. I don't remember seeing a billboard or hearing anything on the radio or anything. And this is supposed to be the month where it's talked about. So I thought...
That's just it. Is that it's not sensational enough for the media to care about it.
Yeah.
There's nowhere near enough awareness about this topic.
The power of awareness itself would help this huge. So I thought making a podcast was doing my part.
Yeah. I mean, we still talk about slavery that was happening 200 years ago today more than we talk about the slavery that's happening right now.
This is modern day slavery.
Yeah.
But really, in my eyes, it's worse because these people...
Based on the statistics, there's more people involved and no one knows about it.
Mm-hmm. And
it's all hidden. In the past, it was all out in the open. People knew about it, but it wasn't illegal. Now, it's all hidden. There's nothing people can do to stop it.
And modern day technology and advances is just the torture is worse.
Yeah.
The drugs are worse. I mean, there's no way out.
And yeah, no matter what your goal is in life, be it good or evil, all these technical advances, like you said, are tools that you can use to accomplish your goals, no matter how good or evil they are. So
I wanted to talk about too, being in Minnesota, we have the big Mall of America, which is a huge, gigantic, unnecessarily large mall.
Yeah, but It's a tourist attraction, or at least it used to be.
It's a huge tourist attraction. I see people from different countries all the time. This is one of a really big. This is one of the targets for pimps and traffickers. We see so many cute girls and cute guys walking around, and a lot of times these girls will be flattered by these men saying, "Oh, you're so beautiful. Do you mind if I give you my business card?" And these business cards are for these traveling agents. They're for these modeling agencies. And what they'll do is they'll bring them to this agency. It looks really legit, and they will take photos of them, and they'll give them a career, and they'll give them money for these photos, and it will last like 6 months or so, and then they'll switch.
Yeah, like I said, they set up a legitimate business.
Yeah. And so the Mall of America is actually a really big location and really good hunting ground for these guys.
I don't think we mentioned this, but once the girl is working for them for a while, they'll subdue her, bring her into a locked room, and put a camera on her and rape her on the camera. And then
blackmail.
Yeah, use that as blackmail, threaten to send it to her family and friends if she doesn't comply with them. That's just another tactic that they use to gain control emotionally.
And once these girls are broken, just to the point of, I'm going to do what you ask me to do because I'm, my will to live is gone, they'll use these girls to recruit other girls. And then when it's time for the cops to step in, they end up arresting the broken down girl for recruiting the other one.
Ugh.
So it's just like this huge snowball of mess.
Yeah, and you may think, well, who cares if her blackmail video goes back to her family? If they know where she is, or if she can escape, is worth it. But if you really think about it, I mean, she's already thrown away 6 months. She's basically written off her family because that's another tactic they use, is getting the girls to turn against their family.
Mm-hmm.
And if her family gets that, it hurts the girl's pride even more if her family knows, because she's like, she made these decisions, she told them, oh, it's going to be fine. And if they get that, the girl's pride will be destroyed in her family's eyes, because they'll be like, she thinks they'll be like, well, we told you so. We told you that if you made these choices, it would be bad for you. But, I mean, obviously loving parents wouldn't respond that way, but that's probably one of the things that goes into their emotional and
just
their decision.
Breaks their psyche even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they'd rather be suffering and no one know it than admit that they were wrong.
Well, if you put yourself in their shoes and really think, what would you do in that situation, it's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want video of me getting raped to be sent to my family.
No, I wouldn't either. So there have been reports. Some people say that the reports are false, but I don't really care. I think it's still happening. The traffickers are going to places like Targets, Walmarts, just normal shopping centers, and in some cases for the child trafficking, using small children to lure in other kids. So they'll have a little girl go up to another little girl and say, hey, come play with me.
How scary is that?
Yeah.
Because they think, oh, I can trust this other little girl. She's
well,
not going to hurt me.
You're a little kid. Well, you don't.
Yeah,
you make friends like that.
Use bait.
So some people say that the mothers that are reporting this are just faking it, trying to get attention. I think that some probably are, but some are really saying, this happened to me, watch out. There's also been reports about like people at IKEA being targeted, families, and they'll say that these two men were following me around, and wherever they went, these two men would follow. And eventually the couple that I'm really talking about went and talked to the people that worked at IKEA, and right when they got to like the customer service desk, the two guys were gone, just like that. So just beware that when you're just running errands, especially if you have kids, that there might be a couple guys that look a little sketchy, but you're like, oh, they're just doing shopping. Like, keep your guard up.
Yeah. You can't trust anyone these days.
And it's also said that when you leave the store and you have a cart, maybe if it's a little dark or even if it's in daytime, try to go with a group of people that are also leaving the store. Don't just go solo. because parking lots are a really easy place to, you kind of swarm your car around, or they'll use their car and kind of park in front of yours, and it gets really sketchy.
Yeah, it's easy. Who was that girl? Oh yeah, Kelsey Smith. She was the girl that was walking around Target, and she didn't notice it, but later when they went over security footage, they saw this sketchy guy following her around and kind of watching her the whole time. And she went out of the store, went to get in her car, and when she was getting in her car, the guy went up to her. I think he pulled a gun on her or something, and basically kidnapped her in her own car. Left his truck there, and she ended up getting murdered.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not trafficking, but that's how easy it is for someone that knows what they're doing. And I think this guy that did this crime was just a random guy from her town that just, gave in to an urge. But it's so easy for especially these trafficking lords that are, they do this every day.
Yeah, you're just doing shopping, and that's all you're thinking about, and they're working. They're on the prowl. So your guard isn't up. You're not paying attention to other people. You're just minding your own business. Mm-hmm. But this is their job. This is what they've been trained to do. So you gotta make sure you're watching and listening and being aware of your surroundings.
Yeah.
Also, from the research that I've done, all the policemen and all the FBI agents say that if they pull a gun on you, don't go in the car. Because chances are, if you're in sunlight and there are other people around, even though they can't see the gun, they're not going to shoot you. They're just going to try to get out.
Yeah, because these guys don't want to get caught.
And wouldn't you rather, sadly to say, wouldn't you rather just, be shot and die than be trafficked your whole life and be branded and be a lot lizard for the rest of your life and be strung out on drugs?
And your chances of surviving a gunshot, people do survive gunshots. And
they do. My dad did.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's just a terrible thing. And just use the buddy system. Don't get caught by yourself.
That was another tip.
At night.
You bring someone with you when you go shopping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is hard to do because, we're living in a world where there's not much free time. It's hard to find people to do stuff with you when you just need to run an errand or something. But if you can't bring someone with you, like she said before, leave the store with other people, or even though you can't really trust those people either, but just be careful. I think you mentioned last week, none of us really know what could happen to us, and no matter how much knowledge we have, we can't 100% guarantee that we're going to prevent something happening to us. So just be grateful for every step you're able to take outside and breathe in the air and hear the birds sing, because even though you can do stuff to prevent it, you never know when it's going to happen.
But you can be prepared and learn things. So to end out the podcast, I'd like to end on a cheery note. Do you want to hear a joke?
Yeah. What is it?
What do you call a hot dog without its bun?
What?
A lonely weenie.
Where did you hear that?
The Carol Burnett Show.
Oh, classic.
So hopefully that made you laugh a little, and we'll...
Yeah, we had to continue our streak of shout-outs for other shows. Carol Burnett Show. So thank you for listening again to this podcast. We really hope that this message gets out there, and that if you haven't heard of how bad sex trafficking is right now, that it kind of lit a spark in you, and that it hopefully will help you protect yourself and your children.
And talked about it to other people.
Yeah. If you enjoy our podcast, please leave us a 5-star review if you wouldn't mind, and also subscribe so you know when we're releasing new episodes. We're playing on every Tuesday. Also, if you'd like to support us, we have a link to our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/VOV podcast. So we'd really appreciate that.
Give us your money.
And also, if you'd like to email us to let us know what you think of the show, or share your personal story with us, or
have a request
for an episode topic, or if you'd like to be interviewed on the show or have us share your story, definitely email us at vovpodcast@gmail.com, also linked in the show notes. And what's that phone number?
Oh yeah,
so I don't forget to put it in the show notes.
So the website I found was dhs.gov, and the number you're supposed to call if you see something or you just think something weird is happening is 1-866-347-2423.
Yes, and I will make sure that's in the show notes as well. And thank you for listening.